Welcome to Practicing Social Advocacy, the mini-series. I am Noam Soker, the University of Washington Combined Fund Drive student intern, bringing you a collection of short interviews with experts who deliver straightforward strategies for becoming more engaged global citizens. As part of the Whole U's First 90 Wellness Challenge, UW CFD staff are facilitating a 90-day habit formation program focused on helping participants identify, connect with, and engage on behalf of causes of which they are passionate. We are guided by our theme, Identify, Assess, Act, Social Advocacy for Everyone. I'm very excited to welcome Paula Reed, Director of Children's Advocacy Centers of Washington, here today. So thank you so much for being here. Ready to start?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Great. So my first question for you is, how do you define social advocacy?
Well, I think social advocacy is where you are working to support or influence a particular issue, a particular group of individuals, a particular cause, particularly folks that maybe can't do so for themselves. And I think when it comes to our work through children's advocacy centers across the state, we are really working on behalf of children who and helping them feel safe and empowered, and try to be their voices when it comes to the trauma that they've experienced through abuse.
Thank you for sharing that and a little bit about what you all are doing. I think one of the themes I've heard throughout this program is advocacy is very much, listening and speaking on behalf. So I'm glad to see that theme continue. My next question for you is, when did you start your journey with social advocacy?
That is such a great question. And as I think about it, it actually started, many years ago. When I first moved to Duluth, Minnesota, and I served at the United Way. And that was really all about social advocacy. I started out doing some fundraising there, and, I had to, and we were supporting a lot of programs that that are essential for folks, whether they're living in poverty or they are youth who need to have a positive role model in their life. And so my role was really to go out into the community and talk with community leaders and talk with state and federal legislative leaders and advocate for resources that would support these direct service programs out in our community. And one thing I think that is so important when it comes to social advocacy and, where I've been really fortunate is where you can have a passion and you really believe and you understand why you're doing the work that you do. It's pretty easy to go out and make the case and advocate and be the voice for those individuals. And so I later moved into the role of the president of the local United Way, and that was, a different level. It was far beyond just fundraising, where we were looking at broader community level issues, such as making sure kids are ready when they start school, so early childhood literacy, and then focusing on the disparities in on-time graduation rates. And that extends, people are oftentimes willing to give a few dollars to support a cause, but asking them to give of their time and really engage in something where they can make a difference, and engaging the right people. So when you're working on something, making sure that you have the voices of those that are directly affected is another important piece. It's not that we are doing things for people, we are doing things with people to help improve their lives. And so I think that that's always been a big part of in my professional life, and coming here to Washington and working to better resources and services and support for children who've been abused or neglected really fits right in line with that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing so many nuggets of wisdom. We're not working for people, we're working with people. We're making sure that those in the community who are affected, their voices are heard, using your passion and your skill. I think that that's something that's sometimes you're super passionate, but the skills that you have may not benefit the organization. And other times when you have that beautiful merging, there's just so much you can do. So thank you for sharing. I guess that it kind of segues perfectly into my next question of can you share a little bit more about what the Children's Advocacy Centers of Washington does?
Absolutely. So my organization is the state chapter for Children's Advocacy Centers across the state. So currently there are 23 CACs in Washington, and in my role, my team and I work to provide support to centers and local communities who are looking to develop centers. CACs are founded on a multidisciplinary approach. So the intent was how to reduce trauma for the children so that if they're disclosing abuse, they don't have to explain what happened to them over and over and over again. Not only does that help protect the child and start them on the path of healing, but it also helps in the case of an investigation so that you're getting accurate information and there's less of a chance for there to be confusion. You can really get to the heart of what is going on. The CAC is that coordinating entity that helps bring the different partners together. So when a child comes in, you've got your law enforcement, your child protective services, your medical, mental health, your advocacy, all together so that everybody's getting that information one time, and then they can come together as a group and use that to make decisions. At the same time, and even most importantly, is making sure that the child and the non-offending caregivers are getting access to the services and supports they need. A lot of times there's many factors affecting that family beyond what has happened to just the child. There may be domestic violence. They may be, really struggling financially. They may have other barriers that make it difficult for them to work through this really difficult situation that has affected their family. And so CACs kind of serve as that one-stop centralized place where children and families can go, and they're intended to be really child-friendly. So it's not that they're walking into, a very public building where it feels kind of sterile and uncomfortable. CACs are places where they go and you walk in right away and you know you're in a place that feels safe for both the child and the family, and hopefully draws them out so that they kind of feel like, wow, these people are all here to help me, and they've come together to really make a difference so that we can move past this and get on with our lives.
It's so heartening to hear that there are advocates and there are organizations that really work towards the solution to the problem, solution oriented in a safe way that, and it just comes back to me, you said we don't want to re-traumatize. We don't want to ask again and again. And the systems you've created or you've structured make sure to protect those who are vulnerable. So thank you for sharing that. It sounds, I mean, you have advocacy in the title, yes. And so I'd love to hear, what are the specific ways that your work does interact with advocacy?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I think there's a lot of different ways because I think social advocacy can be approached in many different ways. So not as much at the chapter, just because we are very small. There's only 3 of us, and we don't have a lot of direct contact with the public. But out in the communities where the child advocacy centers are themselves, they have volunteers. And I think advocacy can be done in that way. Many of our CACs work with local women's groups who are making quilts. Those quilts then can be given to a child when they come to the CACs, so they have something warm and cozy to make them feel safe and secure. Advocacy can be in terms of people who are serving on the local boards or local committees. And we do have those opportunities here at the chapter. We have community representatives on our board and involved in our committees. And then I think that, I spend a lot more of my time advocating and educating at the legislative level, just to help legislators and key leaders understand the role that CACs play in our state in responding to instances of abuse, and making sure that the resources that are available continue to be there, as well as that, raising awareness about these great resources that we have in our state, so that when abuse does occur, that we have the right place for children to get the help that they need. And so I guess, those are some of the ways that CACs and the state chapter engage in advocacy. And then, of course, the advocate's role within the CAC is incredibly important for the child and the family.
So if someone you mentioned a bunch of really great ways to get involved. What are your suggestions for any of the viewers who want to get involved? What could be a first step for them to get involved with CAC?
Well, I would encourage folks to check out our website because we have a listing there of all the CACs across the state. And that's where I would encourage people to make a connection, is if they can connect with their local child advocacy center, talk with them about any opportunities that they have. There's a great opportunity coming up in April with Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I know a lot of our centers are going to be out doing engagement. They're going to be planting pinwheel gardens, things like that. And so I would say on our website, it's cacwa.org. Go there, click on the CAC list, and you can find out where the local CACs are and reach out to them. At the chapter level, we have probably fewer volunteer activities and things like that to do. But again, we just approved a new strategic plan, which is going to be setting up a lot of different work groups and task forces and committees. So, we're always happy to engage folks at this level as well.
Thank you. It's great to know that there are so many ways to get involved, and that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and that we can all kind of be keenly aware of what does that mean. So besides work, going back to you, are there ways that you prefer to be active and engage with social advocacy?
I was thinking a little bit about that as I was preparing for this, and I think that I remember starting out, just volunteering and figuring out how I could personally make a difference. I think sometimes it's like, well, what can I do? And so, yeah, it's easy to make a donation of a few dollars here and there, but I think giving of my time and trying to see where I can lend some of my passion, some of my expertise and experience is a great way to engage in things that really matter. The other thing is, when you're observing things, is really kind of digging in, where can I make a difference? So it's easy to complain about why things are, not a certain way, or about different social issues that we see around. But it really takes people who are willing to step up and try to come up with concrete solutions rather than just being that person complaining on the sidelines. And so, that can be done in so many different ways and at so many different levels, whether you write a letter to the editor, or you do an op-ed, or you engage with your city council, or, numerous ways. And so I think over time, I've realized that, there are lots of ways that you can do more than just sit at the sidelines. And I would encourage folks to find what works for them, and where you think you can lend a voice, and just reach out to organizations and ask them how you can engage, because it's not always clear. We don't always do a great job of saying, this is how you can become involved with us. So sometimes it is a little bit of proactivity by the individual.
You've basically answered my last question of, what advice would you give? But I'd like to know, is there any additional, besides, get off of the sidelines, which I think is hard, but also really encouraging, and we need to be reminded that we have to step in. Is there any additional advice you would give to someone who is new to social advocacy?
Maybe, one thing that could be helpful, because sometimes getting started is challenging and it's intimidating, is to find a mentor find someone that you can work side by side with, someone that has a similar passion, and do it together. It can be intimidating, being the new kid on the block and walking in, and sometimes you're working with individuals that have been doing something for a very long time. And so you feel like, oh, you know, I won't say anything, maybe I'll just watch. But I have to say that it really takes, we need to continue cultivating future leaders. And so it is important for those new voices to be heard and those new ideas to come to play, because, you know, just as society doesn't stay the same, it does take new ways of thinking and new ways of looking at things. New approaches always need to be coming up to challenge the, yeah, we've always done it that way attitude that sometimes we all get really comfortable with. And so one easy way to do that would be to find someone that maybe you can partner with and jump into it together, because sometimes there's a little comfort in having that person there and just knowing, and then always watching. I always think it's sometimes intimidating to share a new idea, but when you do, to just kind of watch, and a lot of times you're going to see heads nodding, and that can be really reaffirming. And so the more often that you are doing these things, the more comfortable it will become.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's social advocacy not only is a journey, but it's codependent. It's a community effort. We have to build coalitions. We have to build networks to make sure that the work gets done. Paula, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Thank you so much for the work that you and CAC of Washington are doing. It's so important, and I really hope that some of the folks who watch this get inspired to reach out to their local chapters and get involved. So thank you very much for this wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is a great opportunity to let people know a little bit more about what we're doing.
Fantastic.